Started. First of all, happy spring to all the attendees. This is Margie Cosmero, as you can see, and I am looking at a relatively bright spring day, and the trees are budding, and that's just a good, refreshing time, right? So welcome to today's presentation, Savvy Women, Smart Investors. We want to thank our partner, NGFC Wealth Management, for providing us with the opportunity to share with the Northrop Grumman Federal Credit Union members and Northrop Grumman employees, as well as many of our Blue Heron clients who are on today. So it's just me today. Liz is taking some much deserved time off with her family, which we didn't know when we scheduled this, but she sends her regards. So I'm going to go ahead and jump right in. I want to be sensitive to your time, and let's go ahead and get started. You will see MFS cited on the different screens as we go through the presentation. As many of you know, we are independent financial advisors. We work with many different institutions, investment institutions across the nation. We really like the MFS presentation here and some of their supporting follow-ups, which we'll get out to you as we conclude and send those out in the email later. So you are here today to find out more about what it is to be a smart investor. And we certainly have our challenges as investors, but I'm going to point out a few other challenges that we as women also encounter along the way. So just some overview here. Please note that MFS does not provide legal, tax, or accounting advice. So leave this on the screen for a minute to satisfy our compliance side of things. These are not recommendations by MFS, nor are they recommendations by Blue Heron or Northrop Grumman Federal Credit Union, because everybody's needs and investments and strategies are different. All right, so for today, we're going to dive in here and we're going to talk about a lot of different things and how we go through life, how there's different challenges along the way. So we're going to spend some time on really just three subsets of life. And we're going to start in just a second with early in life and then carry through to later. But what we're hopeful for in providing this today, in honor of Women's History Month, I may add, is how to navigate the challenges that are out there. And just speaking to you woman to woman, and you know, many of what we're going to talk about experiences either I've encountered or someone on the Blue Heron team has encountered, or those clients that we work with have encountered. As I mentioned, we've got three sections of life here, not to say that one doesn't overflow into the next, because they sure do. So early in life, think of our 20-something sisters out there who are just maybe getting out of college. Maybe they're still in college. I just had this discussion with one of my daughters yesterday as she was thinking back about that post-college time frame and how, yes, in college, study, do well, and then all of a sudden it's graduation and finding ourselves on the other side of that, and just what are we going to do? Now, some are fortunate to have internships that will glide them gently into that career path, but for most, I'd say it's just like starting out and looking for that job. So that's a challenge. And then just looking into the future. And then we've got the midlife stage where the career is in full swing, perhaps, and marriage may be happening. We're going to spend some time on what it means to be single too. just overall financial challenges that come about. And then caretaking. Caretaking could take on the form of caring for children, but it could also be taking care of other loved ones, whether a spouse or a parent or a sibling. And I can think of many who fall into all of those categories. And midlife, starting to think about retirement, just flipping back to the early stage. If you've ever had a conversation about retirement with a 20-something, they certainly glaze over and think that only happens to old people. But time, as we know, marches on, and thinking about and seeing with maybe some of our colleagues at work what that retirement looks like and how is it going to set up for us. And then just this whole what keeps us up at night, it could be just a little bit of everything. Later in life, here are some of the primary considerations or concerns: healthcare, Social Security, and outliving your money. All of these we here at Blue Heron really dive into when we're looking at retirement analysis. Many years ago, we didn't get so much into what the cost of healthcare is going to look like in retirement, nor did we look at Social Security strategies. But really over the last 10, 15 years, maybe 20, those have all become very much a part of the process. And that last bullet, outliving your money, this is, again, what we do here is provide an analysis. And we use age 100. And sometimes we get some scoffs at that. And we've even had a few clients who've said, hey, what does it look like if I live to 104 or 5? So we can draft that out. So just keep that in the back of your minds as we go through here. If you want to take it a step further with us, I'll provide that contact information at the end. So let's flip back, okay? This looks like a good old Norman Rockwell. Hopefully Norman Rockwell is somewhat familiar to you, famous artist who did a lot of art on just life back in the 50s. And this is from the page of a 1950s high school economics, home ec, not Econ 101, a home ec textbook. And you have depicted here the woman in her role as wife and mother. She's made a lovely cake. The kids are all well groomed. And the husband is just gleefully looking at that cake. Well, I do recall taking home ec back in middle school. And for some of you, maybe that's just not even a thing anymore. So let's look at some stats here on how things have changed for women over time. So let's go back to those 1950s. Only 30% of the US labor force was comprised of women. So a little less than a third. And then if we look on the other side of the screen under the This Is Now, you'll see that that has pretty much doubled, almost up to the 60%. So 57%, more than half of the US labor force is women in today's world. And then again, back in the day, 1967, there were not that many women who were the primary breadwinners in their family. It too has, well, it's more than doubled to almost a third of families' primary breadwinner is the woman. So how things have changed over time, and more than likely will continue to. I found this interesting. Now, I've done this presentation numerous times over the years, and this particular slide and the next one are new additions to the presentation. We try to update it. And this is called the pink tax. Well, what the heck is the pink tax? Interestingly, as you can see on the slide here, all of these different costs are escalated for women, whether it's jeans, dry cleaning, razor cartridges, for goodness sakes. Bikes, to have a pink bike costs that much more than a non-pink bike, and kids' helmets and And the vehicle repair, that one irritates me. You know, how many times have we gone to a garage and us being the woman may just get a little jack up on the price there. I'm not by any means suggesting this is acceptable, okay? But we need to be aware of it. Little did I know that this pink tax is truly costing us, and you see here, $1,351 on average per year. So let's be aware of what we can do to not get sucked into that pink tax. Maybe we get the blue bike for the kids instead of the pink bike. But, you know, over the course of time, that starts adding up. And you can see here that, gosh, that 1351. And what if we reposition that? What if we didn't get sucked into that pink tax and instead invested it over the course of time? So just bringing to your attention, and if we can be more knowledgeable, then that can be powerful. So early stages in life, what can either we do if we happen to be in those early stages? I will share with you that I am not in the early stages. In fact, this month I celebrate 37 years in the financial industry, which is so crazy to me. And as someone said, that's almost 4 decades. I go, oh, thank you very much. But let's go back to how we can impart this to perhaps our daughters, okay? Caring for your credit. Now, we've all got our phones, we've got our apps. There's an app called Credit Karma, credit and then karma with a K. It's noted down here, but I'll just shout it out since you might not be able to see that. That's a good place to go and check. I'm not endorsing that above others. You can also check your credit score through maybe your credit card app, through the credit union app, through banking apps. There's a lot of different ways that you can check your credit score, and it's important. It's important from a variety of reasons. One, that you want to make sure that those numbers stay strong. Also, that you're reviewing what debt is out there to make sure that there's nothing, you know, no scams happening, because they're out there. So what impacts your credit score? Well, the amount you owe on loans, the interest rates on the debt, payment history. And if you open that, whatever app it is, and you go into it, it will show you, for example mortgage, if there's any missed months. And you know, this is again just to raise awareness, but it's important for when you go and apply for loans. The length of the credit history, the credit mix, is it all a bunch of retail shops, for example? And what is not part of the mix there is salary. It has nothing to do with your credit score. So you want to be cognizant of your credit score. You want to work on increasing that, getting rid of debt. We have had always some conversations around debt. It's been interesting post-COVID. Even some of our clients, when we were all, you know, holed up in our homes, Amazon might have taken over. I'm thinking of a client in Florida who said, yeah, Amazon got out of hand and I've got to work on paying this off. So it can happen, and just debt overall is something that we just want to be really, really careful about. Not to mention that with the rise in interest rates, please look at your interest rates that you're paying on credit cards, and even call the companies and see if they can reduce it, or look at other credit cards. Northrop Grumman Federal Credit Union may be a good place to even consolidate some credit cards to get a lower rate. And as I mentioned, there are reasons to keep a healthy score and ways to do it. So you want to make sure those bills are paid on time. One way to do it, we've got online banking and have had for years. So to make sure that you don't inadvertently miss a payment, just set up, even if it's, you're going to go back and pay more on it, just at least set it up so it's not going to be delinquent. Keep those credit card balances low. They can eat you alive, especially when the interest rates are climbing on those. 20% is not unheard of in today's world and could even be going higher than that. And those will just eat you alive. It's so hard to keep up with it when that gets out of hand. Open credit only when needed. I'm going to segue and say you can freeze your credit. You can go onto the different agencies. This is more of a protective mechanism to actually freeze your credit so you don't have the bad guys out there getting in and securing credit cards on your information. And then again, just checking your credit score. This says once a year it's free, great, but I think that checking on it every couple of months is really more of a protective way of doing things. All right, so let's talk about budgeting. And we know, and if Liz was here, she'd say, yeah, let's not call it budget. Let's call it cash flow. And I think that budget sometimes just conjures up this, oh my gosh, you're going to just keep me right in these lanes and I can't even spend money on anything fun. Not at all, but we want to raise awareness. And if we can come up with some parameters on spending, that over the long haul, this can be helpful. So think of it in terms of this 50-30-20, 50% mortgage or rent. Think of it as utilities, foods, the things that we have to spend money on, 50%, good rule of thumb. 30% on wants, you know, early on in life, that's probably not going to be really maybe doable, but we'll go with it. And then how about 20%? Now, sometimes 10% is used as a guideline, but I am going to throw out and challenge you to increase what goes into the financial goal column. Think of your 401k plan. Think of even building up local emergency savings. All right, so this chart here, I hope this picture tells you a lot. Don't get, you know, too put off by the chart, but let's see what we can learn from this. Okay, this is looking at a $10,000 investment, and I think when the market is doing what the market does in terms of volatility, it's really important to remember that when we're in it for the long haul, that over time, it erases some of the bumping. It erases a lot of the bumpiness. But just in case you are super conservative, let's see how these numbers play out. So the same $10,000 investment over time at a 3% rate going out 40 years. So, you know, again, if we start our careers in our 20s, 40 years of investing, if we stay too conservative through that time, that end result on that original 10,000 turns into 32,000. Okay, you can see that on the right-hand side of the screen. If we include more that can provide overall growth, let's bump this return up to 5%. And you can see that 10,000 over the course of time, it's already doubled in 20 years, and then going out the full 40, 10,000 turning to 70,000. So that's on a 5% rate of return. 6%, maybe that means more of your contributions going into equities over time, and that has produced a greater return. That 6%, 10,000 is now 100,000. And that's just, again, if we think of that as 1 year, imagine doing that year after year after year. So again, my challenge to you, yes, there is absolutely a place for conservative investing, not suggesting otherwise. But if we're too conservative throughout time, that can certainly just dampen that end return. All right, so back to how I would like to challenge you is to really start with that financial goal of saving at the top. So if we put in place the discipline early, then it becomes more habitual and less of an issue if later on, and we have this conversation all the time, how about increasing your 401k plan contribution, your IRA contributions, etc. That's sometimes met with resistance. So if we just start out strong, maybe not so much. Okay. All right. So let's think about, in this early stage, looking at the various benefits, because sometimes there are overlooked as whether you're looking at jobs at different different opportunities. And I love this. This has got to be like a Google office site or something with the beanbag chairs. But in regards to the benefits, let's just get back to that. We want to make sure, first and foremost, that contributions are going into a company retirement plan and that you're fully maximizing what the company match is. I call it the 11th commandment. Like, make sure that you're contributing enough to get the full company match. There may or may not be a vesting period. Sometimes that's with things like profit sharing. Health insurance coverage. We have that conversation, especially as we move towards retirement. I think it's lost sometimes on individuals what that health insurance coverage benefit, how much that does help. And nowadays, maternity, not just maternity time off, but there's also maternity, paternity, and adoption leave, which is great. Tuition reimbursement, even again, coming out of college, finding a job where maybe the master's degrees are offset from the company, and just really making sure that you know what those benefits are and you're taking advantage of them. Student loan repayment assistance has also become more prevalent, in line with student debt, unfortunately. All right, we're moving on here. Middle life stage. With a daughter that will soon be married, I think that this is just a terrific slide. And having conversations early in a relationship and communicating is just so important. So you've come to know us, hopefully, through our webinar presentations, our Zoom meetings such as this, but so much of our time is spent sitting down with individuals, with couples, and it's always interesting to see the dynamic as we talk about financial matters, as you can maybe imagine. So talking with your partner about financial goals, really important. My husband and I, married almost 30 years. I make sure, I call it the State of the Union. We have a State of the Union. We make sure that we have a firm understanding of our financials. However it works for you, the main thing is that you communicate. Prenup, maybe there is a place for that. Maybe not right out of the gate if you're 20-something and nobody has a whole heck of a lot. However, it may be something to consider with second and third marriages, with kids, in some cases that one of the couple is coming in, and or maybe there were financial issues with one of the couple and the other couple has multiple properties, for example, and a lot in their retirement plan. So just really working through that. Credit scores, that's a great one to put on the table. Hey, here's my credit score, what's yours? And really taking a look at that, thinking of one situation where it didn't come out till later how many times the spouse had filed bankruptcy prior to the marriage. That would have been a red flag, right? I like that fourth bullet. Discuss how much you would spend without telling the other spouse. I might have to try this over dinner tonight. We haven't really had that conversation. Create a budget for present and future needs. Just really laying it out there, just being very pragmatic about it, I think can be very helpful. And it can also be helpful going back to that 20% savings that we're talking about. Working towards long-term savings goals. I think I've mentioned I have a daughter getting married here shortly. My husband and I decided on this dollar amount. His parents said this dollar amount. The difference is on the kids. And so they have been saving, and I think it's been a great exercise for them to see what they can save, because that also will parlay into a future home purchase. Beneficiary information, super important, making sure that, hey, if you had mom or dad on there, maybe it's time to be changing that to spouse. So a lot going on there. All right, this is not the middle finger, just saying. At first glance, maybe some of you were a bit appalled to that with this, but it's not. I think, you know, as you step back and you're like, oh, okay, no ring on that finger. And it's important. This is just taken from actually the New York Magazine 7 years ago. But there has been an evolution over decades where it's not the necessity, if you will, to get married. Women have careers and they can remain single, and all is good however it plays out for people. So again, I thought that was a pretty funny slide. All right, so what we're going to look at here is another look at, I'm going to just go through this chart here relatively quickly for the sake of time. And this is, I think for young people, it's great, but I also think for middle stage life and also for later in life. So what the assumption is here is starting that contribution at whatever job it is at age 22. Maybe it's right out of college. Maybe it's they jumped into a career right after high school. Whatever the case is, it's our starting point. 3% initial savings rate, and you'll see this auto escalate when they started incorporating that into 401k plans. It wasn't that long ago. I was giving a big hooray on that, because as time goes on, increasing that 401k is super powerful. Employer contribution. I mentioned before, make sure that you're putting enough in to get the full company match. This is a pretty common match, 3% on the first, plus 50% of the next three, making it a 4.5% contribution. And you can do the math. You do not want to walk away from free money. And then this is not pie in the sky. This hypothetical investment return of 6% is totally doable over the long term when we incorporate equities into the mix. So let's see how this plays out. All right, so if we just were looking at contributions, that's the, looks like purple to me. And then adding that company match, you're seeing how this is adding up here. And go here. And by the way, that was a starting salary of 40,000. You can't probably see that in the small print. And some annual pay increases of 2%. Big takeaway here. And I remember with one of my kids, they came home after learning about their benefits and their 401k plan. They said, do you know if I start contributing, I could be a millionaire by the time I'm 64, 65? I said, yeah, I think I've been mentioning that. Regardless, the fact that they absorbed that, this is doable. But again, we want to start early, and we want to be, impressing this upon those younger generations, how important it is. All right, switching gears here. So where does the money go over the course of time? You'll see the slide here, 17% of women have left or expect to leave the workplace to become a caregiver. 7% caring for children, 10% caring for aging parents. I'm more in that latter stage where I see my peers who are coming out of the workforce to take care of parents. And for many of you, you have friends, maybe relatives who are taking a break and staying home with the kids for some period of time. But by being out of the workforce, again, it takes a hit on the overall picture. Another magazine cover here, Bloomberg Business Week from 2014, freeze your eggs, free your career. This is not me putting this out there. I'm bringing this up just from the standpoint of how things have changed over time. Even things like, and I won't get it right, but fertility treatments, okay? I'll put this out there. There's a cost associated with that. And if we look at it from the standpoint of, okay, not only am I saving over here for my eventual retirement, but I may have to save in some of these other avenues. So things like fertility treatments, adoption's another one. There's a huge expense associated with it. And just being out of the workforce also can just dampen those end results. So let's look at a hypo here for a quick minute, okay? So we have our 22-year-old starting with a 3% savings rate and all that we just looked at, okay? We're gonna look at it from the standpoint of when she stops working and stays home for a period of time, maybe until the kids get further along in school, and how that changes it. I'm not suggesting that you don't do this, but we need to be aware of how it's affecting the overall savings and the eventual retirement. And here is that picture for you. So we already looked at the one going from 22, continuing in the workforce, that initial escalation of the initial contributions over time, and sure enough, 1.3 million. If someone does take a brief break, that drops by, what is that? I'll just call it 400,000, makes a difference. And then the last is just contributing that 3%, keeping it a minimal amount, and never escalating the amount that goes in. So the takeaway here is, you might be saying, oh, Margie just wants us to continue to work. Not at all. It's just raising awareness here. And then to the last bit where the assets are just not growing, if there's not an increased contribution, I mean, they're growing, but how much more they can grow by challenging yourself to add more. A percent here over the course of time is doable. All right. And then the very, very last one is just indicating here, if it was a super conservative investor, think about your stable value plan. It might feel all safe and secure. I get it. The markets, I always say, market's going to do what the market's going to do. But if you're too conservative, then you're really, really putting just a monkey wrench into what those eventual balances can be. And remember, when you're adding monthly or every paycheck twice a month, your dollar cost averaging in, it helps smooth out the ride. Markets go on sale periodically. Let's take advantage of it. All right, this slide gets busy. I'm going to just look at the bottom line here again, just to be sensitive to your time. This is showing us Karen. She did not take any time out. She contributed. She had a good company match. Her final value when she's ready to walk out the door, we're back to that 1.3 million, and what income she could be looking at in retirement. Sarah took some time off. The kid stayed home with the kids till they were in school. Still did her contributions, still had some company match, but you can see here how on the bottom line, the eventual income that can come from this bucket that we're creating of assets can greatly reduce. And then Maria over here, she didn't go back to work. She just stayed home. And again, power to her. Maybe she went from caregiving for the kids to caregiving from parents. My goal here is just to raise the awareness. All right, this one I can certainly relate to from the aspect of, I've just heard from one of my friends, she's a grandmother again. So I just, you know, I'm not a grandmother yet, but I welcome the time when it comes. So we have different financial needs. When you think about those early years with little ones, oh my gosh, the cost of childcare in today's world. Not to say that I didn't do it for many years, but oh boy, that's a chunk out. And even diapers. I remember getting raises once the diapers were gone. And then college cost. So let's think of this as far as the evolution of it, whether it's your own kids or grandkids or relatives or even ourselves, okay? And then college in today's world has inflated more than pretty much any other area. And we'll have a conversation with clients numerous times throughout the year. Their child is getting ready to get out of high school. They're looking at colleges. And in some cases, I don't think that folks are super realistic about it when they're looking at the price tag of private school just because the child can get in. What are they going to be saddled with in terms of debt? So really having a good conversation before even visiting colleges on what that may cost. And it's still surprising to me that that's not looked at in advance. The last picture here is when the children come back to the nest. My youngest is in college and she's down at NC State. She's doing a great job. I'm very proud of her. If she comes back, she comes back, but being the daughter of a financial planner, there will be expectations, I can assure you. And it's not unusual through life that my kids have worked in the office, whether it's stuffing envelopes or whatever it is, because there's a cost if they come back home, right? I mean, there's another person in the house who's eating. So we just need to be aware of these different stages of life and the impact to our own finances. Occasionally we'll run into clients who are approaching retirement, but they're still paying for adult kids' bills. Maybe it's a phone bill, but maybe it's helping them out with rent. So that too is just gonna just really drive down what goes into the retirement account and eventually the financial health of retirement. All right, long-term care, I can get on my soapbox real quick. I've lived it with my parents, with the cost of care escalating as it is. Thankfully, my parents had long-term care insurance in place. My mom's cost of care end of life was up to $12,000 a month. And I'm not saying this as, hey, aren't I great that I got that in place for my parents? I'm saying it that we have to be realistic. My eyes were open to it. Being in this profession, we have this conversation all the time. And unfortunately, it's one of those conversations nobody wants to have. But if the cost of care comes up, whether it's your parents, whether it's you later, how is it going to be tackled? How is care going to be addressed? And we've heard it all, I think. I don't think there's any response to that we haven't heard. for some, it can be kind of like, oh, I'll make sure I take care of that. Whatever, use your imagination. Others who say, nope, I'm going to drop at age 80 because my parents did. Like, well, we don't know that. Medical science is pretty progressive in today's world. If the need comes up, here are costs in today's world: $255 a day in a nursing home, average $5,000 in the home care per month, which is, of course, what we would all prefer, but there's a cost to that. And then the average time frame of 3 years. So if we're looking at the middle one, 5 times 12, 60 times 3, 180,000. And that, I think, is an extremely conservative amount. Making sure you're having the conversation is so important. And I understand nobody does want to talk about, well, what if I'm inferred? What if I do need somebody to help me get dressed, shower, all the above that can come with it? I had a conversation via email this morning with a client's daughter whose mom needs care. The daughters are just at that point of kind of crisis management. And fortunately, we did put something in place. It's just even getting to that psychological acceptance that this is happening with mom. Now let's take the step to make sure we're addressing it. Putting this out there to you all to have the conversation, whether it's about your parents with your parents, it's about your own self. How are you going to be taken care of? Because the statistics are not in our favor. It's either going to be from one of these three: retirement and savings, long-term care insurance, Medicaid, probably not an option unless you get rid of all the assets except for maybe it's $5,000, not very much, or your spouse or your family. Another statistic here: every day until 2030, 10,000 of my peer baby boomers are going to turn 65. 10,000 a day. That's a big number. 69% of Americans have done little or no long-term care planning. I certainly believe this. We have the conversation, and some act on it right away. That seems to be more if they've had that experience with loved ones. 48 million caregivers in the US. 89% of them are caring for a relative. So what is the plan? Virtually all caregivers had at least one caregiving expense over the course of the last year out of their own pocket. 78% of caregivers routinely are pulling from their own pocket. So at the end, again, I'll have contact information. If we can help you figure this out, we're here to do that. All right, latter stages of life. This isn't like way end. This doesn't have to be like age 80 plus. This could be like 50 into end of life. So this recent survey of plan participants, 401k plan participants, showed that women have less access. They don't even have a plan that they can go to. Defined benefit plan being the pensions of days gone by. 82% of women entitled to survivor benefits and their own retirement benefits would have received a higher monthly amount if they could have delayed. But I want to come back to survivor benefits. For those who still have pension options, it is so important to keep in mind, even though it would be a higher pension payment for a single, if there's a spouse involved, more than likely, it's going to be important to provide for him or for her as well. Please do not just jump into it without considering those survivor benefits. And the same holds true with Social Security. I just kind of segue to the pension side because sometimes it's just not even part of the overall analysis. Social Security, there are different ways to skin that cat as well. If you're single, It could be continue to work at these higher level wages, because that is increasing your eventual Social Security payment. Because what happens is those early years, I think back when I was working at age 16 and I look back at my Social Security benefits, ssa.org is where you want to go. And you look back and like, wow, at 16, I made a whopping $350 that year, that summer. But those start dropping off the longer that we're in the workforce. If you're married, it's important to look at both of the Social Security benefits. Oftentimes, Liz and I are like, okay, well, let's look at this from the standpoint, if one starts with their Social Security benefits and we hold off on the higher amount, because when one passes away, you're going to be receiving only one Social Security benefit. Okay, that makes sense. It will be the higher one. So why not let that continue to grow if that is a possibility? And then we look at other strategies to make that happen. If you are divorced, but you were married for 10 years or longer, it may be more beneficial to claim off of your ex-spouse. This is totally doable, and no, they do not need to be aware that you are doing this. If you happen to be married twice, two times, 10 years or longer, you could even pick or choose on that. Interesting. If you're widowed, you actually have a bit more flexibility in starting and switching. So if you want more details on any of these, again, please reach out to us. All right, I think we've ascertained whether it's the pink tax or now looking at the fact that we still live longer than our male counterparts. And there's additional costs associated with life, but there's also a lot of healthcare expenses in the latter years. And you can see how this, could be an additional $100,000+ if we're living into those average years. Okay. As we wind down here today, let's see how we're doing on time. Okay, we're doing pretty well. I want to spend a little bit of time talking about legacy planning, and this particular slide is a reference and a picture of the family love letter. It actually is, there is such a thing. You can Google it, family love letter. And this is allowing whomever is completing this document to really lay it out there, to really spend some time thinking about what you want to convey to your loved ones when you pass. Here's what we, I'd say really over the last decade have been working with our clients to make sure that they have estate planning in good order. We have seen both sides of it. Those who pass and really did take care of making sure that all the I's were dotted and the T's were crossed leading up to the passing, as opposed to those who did absolutely no planning whatsoever. And none of us want that on our loved ones. So what can we do? Well, we can make sure that we do have, especially important, and I'm going to jump around here a little bit, healthcare directives. If you cannot make a decision on your own behalf, who is going to be the decision maker? Okay, we don't really want to leave it to the state or the court system to be doing this. Durable power of attorney, again, so important. We tell clients this all the time. We want a trusted contact on file. However, that trusted contact is not the same as a power of attorney. Okay, if we cannot take care of our financial needs any longer, someone is going to have to step in, and that power of attorney better be in place. Otherwise, again, you may have to go through the court system to have that power of attorney put in place for you. A couple of these others, a legacy plan, revocable living trust may or may not be pertinent to your particular situation. We'll leave that to the estate planning to determine. A will is important because, yes, while you may have your beneficiaries outlined, you also want to make sure that your home and other areas of your assets are written up in that will. Document locator. I think we'll be able to send a worksheet for you on that front. Again, just to let your loved ones know where everything is and to stay educated, especially on estate tax side of things from a federal standpoint. Unless you're a multi-millionaire, that's probably not going to be an issue, but it is relevant state to state how much taxation there might be after a spouse. All right, this is a cute little cartoon, add a little levity here. This is a young woman early on through time, growing up, aging, actually shrinking. My youngest daughter loves to stand next to me. She's 5'11", and I don't think I'm 5'7". Yeah, I might be 5'7" now, but the point is, you see that little height difference there. And then at the very end, this woman said, well, that sucked. You know, time goes by fast. We want to bring awareness to the table for you to concentrate some time on your financial overall picture. There are many who spend more time planning vacations than they do planning their retirement. That is a fact. One more here, and then we're going to tie it up with a bow. So here's Dad reading the bedtime story, and I just love this one. And the little girl says, skip to the part where the princess creates multiple streams of income, builds wealth, and invests it all in cash flowing assets. Way to go. We have an actual bumper sticker floating around the office here that says, a man is not a financial plan, which one of my daughters brought up in a middle school conversation when one of her classmates said, I can't wait to go to college and find my husband. And she brought up, my mom has a bumper sticker that says, a man is not a financial plan. And let that be true, right? As I said, we will send out some supporting worksheets that we hope will help you, whether it's a locator, and then I'll touch on this ever so quickly for the sake of time. Being philanthropic and giving and charitable and making that a family conversation, I think can also be huge. And here's our tied up with a bow. So really looking at a budget, I'll call it a cash flow worksheet, and we'll be sure to send that too. I think that would be helpful for most on the call to just kind of, I call it plug and play, so that you see, okay, this is the incoming, and here's where the money is going. And oh my gosh, I didn't realize that our Verizon bill was up to whatever it is per month. Man, we don't need all those stations. Let's cut some of that out. Just really to scrutinize where the money is going. Understanding what your income needs will be later in life, we can help you with that through our retirement analysis. Diversification, it matters greatly. I'm not going to spend a lot of time on that today, but you do not want to put all of your proverbial eggs in one basket. You don't want to be super conservative, nor do you want to be super aggressive. You want to have a little bit in these different pieces of the pie. Dollar cost averaging is what you do when you add each and every paycheck. It helps smooth the ride. It helps to take advantage of markets as they go down. Please do not, when markets go down, change the direction of your dollars going in to being ultra conservative, because you're getting better purchasing prices when the market does go through its pullback. Using professional advice helps on the behavioral finance side of things. It helps to take the emotion out of it so that you can have a more successful outcome. Setting financial limits for adult kids, again, so important for them and for you. And I would encourage you to encourage them to even start saving into a Roth IRA as soon as they start getting their first paycheck. Setting goals, know what your backup plan is. That's a good one for that whole discussion about what if mom or dad needs care later on. Who and how is that going to be covered? And continuing to stay educated. This is just citing that how MFS conducted their defined contribution plan. And in closing, here you will find our contact information. You can put your phone up there and take a picture of that credit union sign there. You can reach out to Debbie Schilling in our office if you would like to take a closer look at where things are in your personal financial life. And again, we want to give a shout out to NGFCU and our long-term partnership over time. Thank you all for attending. Truly appreciate it, and have a wonderful day.